Hey guys, tonight we slip back, way back, into a time when skin wasn't just skin. It was a billboard for your spiritual status. You're walking through the desert now, the air dry enough to crack your lips, just from breathing. Sand crunches under your feet as you approach the sprawling tent camp of ancient Israel. It smells like dust, sweat, and faintly of roasted lamb, with a touch of burning incense. A low hum of daily life pulses through the camp, children laughing, goats complaining, and somewhere in the distance, the soft chant of a Levite tuning his psaltery. This is the world of Leviticus, where religion isn't just about prayers or offerings. It's about skin, and not in a beauty influencer kind of way. If your skin looked off, you didn't go to a healer, you went to a priest. Welcome to the era where your spiritual leader was also your dermatologist. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to type, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're just arriving at the outer edges of the Israelite camp, nestled in the wilderness of Sinai. Picture it, thousands of tents like little mushroom caps, dotting the sandy landscape. And in the center, the tabernacle, God's holy Airbnb. Priests bustle about, their linen robes fluttering as they carry bowls of blood and golden incense burners like it's the most casual thing in the world. But today, something's off. A man approaches a priest, tugging at his sleeve. He lifts his tunic and exposes a patch on his arm. Pale, flaky, and slightly raw around the edges. You lean in. It's not leprosy, not yet. But it's suspicious. The priest squints, then gently nods. The man is quarantined for 7 days. Yep, welcome to divine dermatology. The priests of Leviticus didn't just offer sacrifices. They diagnosed skin disease, body hair loss, and even mildew in fabrics. They were the front line of public health before the concept even existed. Of course, their main tool wasn't a microscope. It was prayer, ritual, and a really keen eye for flaky patches. One mainstream historical fact here, in many ancient cultures, religious leaders were the de facto doctors. The Hebrew priests fit right into this mold, but with a heavy layer of theological meaning. Your rash wasn't just a rash. It might have been a signal that you'd fallen out of favor with God. Talk about pressure. As you keep walking, the sun hangs heavy overhead, baking the camp like a flatbread. You pass a cluster of Levites bent over scrolls. These scrolls are filled with detailed instructions. What kinds of blemishes require quarantine, when to burn garments, how long to wait before inspecting a sore. It's like reading the world's oldest medical coding manual, minus the insurance headaches. You peek at one scroll and see an odd entry about someone with a shiny white patch. If the hair in the patch has turned white, and there's raw flesh in it, unclean. If not, wait and see. There's a definite vibe here of better safe than sorry, but with sacred consequences. You begin to realize this wasn't just medicine, it was moral medicine. Here's the quirky tidbit for this stretch of story. The priests also inspected mildew in clothing. Yep. If your tunic grew a greenish blotch, you brought it in for evaluation. If it spread, the priest declared it unclean. The garment was burned. Imagine a spiritual laundry service with judgmental overtones. And still, historians argue whether these laws were meant primarily for health and hygiene, or if they functioned symbolically to create boundaries between holy and unholy, clean and unclean. Some scholars even believe the skin issues described in Leviticus don't correspond to any known medical conditions, at least not ones we diagnose the same way today. You reach the edge of the camp again, watching the sun begin its descent. The golden light turns the tents into glowing beehives, and the air cools just enough to make your shoulders unclench. Somewhere a ram bellows, a signal that another day in this sacred skin clinic is done. But for the priests, there's no real clocking out. If someone shows up at dusk with a suspicious boil, it's another inspection, another possible quarantine, another chance to stand between cleanliness and chaos. And you can't help but admire them, these strange, holy middlemen, part doctor, part judge, part divine concierge. You slip behind a tent, finding a quiet moment by a fire pit where embers glow like red stars in a dusty universe. You think about what it must have been like to live in a world where your skin dictated your place in the community, where a spot or a scab could exile you from your family, and where only a priest, trained in spiritual skincare, could bring you back in. Then again, they didn't exactly have moisturizers, or antibiotics, or even basic soap as we know it. So you really had to trust that when a guy in linen robes looked at your flaky elbow and said, "Come back in 7 days," he knew what he was doing. Maybe he did. Or maybe, just maybe, this whole system was about more than health. Maybe it was about visibility, about making the hidden obvious. Skin problems are like sins. In a way, they rise to the surface. They demand attention. And in the desert, under that relentless sun, nothing stays hidden for long. You wake the next morning, or at least, it feels like you've been here all night, just in time to see the priest return to the man he quarantined. 7 days have passed. The sun is already burning through the haze of dawn, casting long shadows across the sandy floor of the camp. You rub your eyes and watch as the priest kneels, taking a careful look at the patch of skin. Is it bigger? Has it faded? Any new white hairs? The priest's checklist isn't just memorized, it's lived. You notice how his fingers hover, but don't touch. How his gaze lingers just long enough to decide between clean and unclean. The stakes are high. A misdiagnosis doesn't just mean physical risk. It could exile someone, or worse, allow uncleanness to spread invisibly through the camp like a whispered rumor. You trail him throughout the morning. First, he sees a woman with peeling skin near her scalp. Then, a boy with what might be a burn or maybe an infection. It's hard to tell when everything looks like sandpaper and sunburn. The priest examines every inch of every concern with quiet reverence, and the tiniest flinch of concern when things look suspiciously shiny. In the Levitical world, shiny is not your friend. The Hebrew word often translated as leprosy in our Bibles is zareth, but historians widely agree this wasn't what we think of today as Hansen's disease. Zareth covered a whole range of skin conditions. Some serious, some not, but all symbolically heavy. Even slight discolorations could carry huge implications. Think of it as a spiritual rash with legal consequences. This whole process has rules tighter than a high school dress code. There are categories. If it's a white swelling with raw flesh, it's a no. If it's just a white swelling but no raw flesh, wait 7 days. If it's spread after the initial look, unclean. But if the affected area turns entirely white, surprise, clean. Apparently, full coverage is weirdly better than patchy. Levitical logic is a little counterintuitive. You sit near the edge of the tabernacle courtyard now, watching another priest inspect someone's burn wound. If the burn produces a white spot, with white hair inside it, unclean. If there's no hair and it hasn't spread, maybe just wait. Maybe it'll go away. It's like ancient dermatology mixed with divine wheel of fortune. You spun, shiny white flake. That's going to be a recheck. Let's sprinkle in your quirky tidbit here. Priests used absolutely no tools. No magnifying glass, no scraping instruments, not even a basic ointment. Just eyes, hands at a careful distance, and lots of rules. Imagine diagnosing complex dermatological symptoms with nothing but natural lighting and prayer. You can't help but wonder how many ancient Israelites faked normal skin just to avoid being quarantined. You'd probably do the same. That's not flaking. That's just dry air. I swear. As you listen to the priests muttering through the checklist like monks on a particularly strange scavenger hunt, a few modern thoughts creep in. This looks a lot like triage. Not the medical kind, but social triage. Who stays in the community? Who has to leave? Who's restored? All based on what your skin says about you. One mainstream fact here is that ancient societies often used visible health markers, especially skin, as indicators of spiritual or moral fitness. In Egypt, Greece, and Mesopotamia, physical deformities were sometimes read as signs of divine disfavor. Israelite society wasn't so different. Except here, the rules were divinely dictated, etched into scrolls with terrifying precision. And just in case your skin wasn't enough, body hair gets its own regulations. Is the hair white? Is it falling out? Did it grow back? Each answer matters. You watch a priest gently examine the head of a man who's gone bald. Baldness isn't automatically unclean. But if there's a reddish sore on the bald patch, Yikes. You start scratching your own head just thinking about it. Don't worry. It's probably just nerves. Or is it? Historians still argue whether these inspections were purely about controlling disease or something deeper. Some say the priests acted more like moral referees than health officials. Others argue it was both physical health woven inseparably into spiritual health, like strands in the same linen robe. As the sun climbs higher, the rhythm of inspections doesn't slow. The priest steps into a tent, called for a more private assessment. You don't follow boundaries, even in ancient Israel. But you wait nearby, overhearing snippets. It hasn't spread. Still no white hair. Come back in 3 days. What's fascinating isn't just the level of detail. It's how personal it all is. Every diagnosis means something. And not just physically. It impacts where someone sleeps, eats, who they can touch, even whether they're allowed to bring an offering to God. There's a subtle tenderness beneath all the regulations. These inspections aren't cold. The priests aren't harsh. They're careful, intentional, almost like they know how much is at stake. They're not here to shame or punish. They're trying to keep the community safe and spiritually whole. Still, you notice something. Everyone walks a little more nervously around the priests. Every itch gets second-guessed. You imagine living in that tension, never quite sure if a spot on your arm is just a bug bite or a one-way trip outside the camp. One woman crosses your path, clutching her shawl tightly, hiding her hand. The priest sees her hesitation, asks to see it. A small raised sore. He leans in. You hold your breath. He nods, not in alarm but in recognition. He murmurs, "Wait 7 days." You see the woman exhale like she's been holding her fear in for a week already. You know that feeling. We all do, even now. Because deep down, the idea that something on your surface might define your worth, that's timeless. The sun begins its descent again, and the camp grows quieter. Fewer inspections now. Just the soft wind through the tents, and the occasional call of someone asking, "Am I clean yet?" The priests keep walking. They always do. And tomorrow, the checklist starts over. You rise early again, though time feels slippery in this place. It's hard to tell how long you've been drifting through the rhythms of camp life. The morning air is cooler, the dust clings less. But today has a different weight. You're not following the priests now. You're following the man with the rash. His name isn't spoken. Not anymore. People avert their eyes as he walks by. He's been declared unclean. You notice he's wearing torn clothes, and his hair, what's left of it, is disheveled on purpose. He walks with his upper lip covered, muttering a warning. Unclean, unclean. Not for drama, it's required. This is the leper's lonely bell. You walk behind him, trying to imagine how quickly things unraveled. One patch of discolored skin, one inspection, 7 days, then another, then the words no one wants to hear, "Hey is unclean." Just like that, he's exiled. No court hearing, no appeal. He now lives alone outside the camp, as if the wilderness itself is safer company than the people he used to laugh with at dinner. You follow him to the outskirts of the settlement. A little rocky area, with a few sad scraps of fabric tied around sticks. Not quite a home, more like a suggestion of one. Other figures move out here too, shadows of people who once belonged, who now drift in this liminal space between sickness and silence. Mainstream historical fact, in ancient Israel, those with Zarathai commonly, but not accurately, translated as leprosy, weren't just isolated for physical health reasons. They were also cut off spiritually and socially. They couldn't participate in religious festivals, sacrifices, or even basic community events. Being unclean meant more than being sick. It meant being symbolically dead. You sit near the edge of the leper's little outpost, watching him tend a fire. He doesn't speak, but he hums. A haunting little melody. Something he probably sang to his children once. Now it echoes across dry stones and cactus like shrubs. You realize you haven't seen him touch another person all day. You wonder how long it's been. Weeks, months. Quirky tidbit for you. Some Jewish traditions outside the Bible imagined that those declared unclean might cover their entire bodies in dust or ashes. Not just as a sign of mourning, but to make their exile more visible to passers-by. Like they were marking themselves as living ghosts, as if their presence among the living needed to be constantly apologized for. You wander back toward the camp briefly and see a small group of children playing with pebbles. One of them points to the edge of the field, where the leper once stood, and whispers, "That's where the cursed ones go." You feel a pang in your chest. Children learn these divisions young. Unclean, untouchable, unsafe. Historians still argue whether the rules about uncleanness were driven more by health concerns or social control. Was this really quarantine, or was it a way to enforce spiritual purity at the expense of human connection? Some scholars see it as an early form of moral coding, turning physical illness into theological exile. You remember something else: the priest doesn't check up on the leper daily. There's no nurse making rounds. Once declared unclean, the person lives apart indefinitely. Only when the symptoms fade, and if they fade, can the person request a reinspection. Until then, it's just waiting, alone, hoping your skin clears up before your spirit breaks. You find a rock and sit beside the man again. He's cooking something, wild roots and what looks like a lizard. Doesn't offer you any. Not out of rudeness. Just instinct. He's used to people staying away, and you're not exactly allowed to be near him either. But rules blur in this dreamlike space you've stepped into. He points toward the camp, then touches his arm. You get the message. He thinks he's healing. The inflammation's down, the skin's tightening, cracking less. Maybe, just maybe, he'll walk back toward the priest soon. Maybe he'll hear the words he's been praying for in silence. You are clean. As the sun sets, the fire between you two flickers higher. The stars above begin to push through the violet dusk. It's quiet except for the wind and the soft hiss of something boiling over. The man doesn't sing again, but you remember his song and how easily a life can move from center stage to outer shadow. A final image lingers with you, the leper adjusting the cloth over his mouth, preparing for sleep beneath a crooked piece of canvas. You wonder how he'll dream tonight. Of family, of the day his name was last spoken, with love, or maybe just of skin returning to normal, so he can walk back to the camp and finally stop muttering that cursed word unclean. You head back toward the tents, and the glow of firelight from the main camp catches on your skin. You suddenly feel hyper-aware of every freckle, every itch, every sunburned patch. And you think, how strange, that back then, a tiny imperfection could make you disappear. You drift into mourning with the image of the leper still in your mind. The isolation, the silence, the heavy ritual of becoming invisible. But today, your focus shifts, not to those who are unclean, but to the intricate process of becoming clean again. Because in the world of Leviticus, being healed wasn't enough. Healing was just step one. What came next was a whole performance, a sacred choreography involving birds, wood, blood, and, surprisingly, a bit of clay pottery. You find yourself near the tabernacle again. The camp stirs with the quiet clatter of morning. The priests are already up. And here comes a man, his head bowed, his face washed. You recognize him. It's the same one from the leper's outpost. Somehow his skin is clear. No white patches, no scabs. Just plain, regular, blessedly boring skin. He's come to be examined. The priest looks him over carefully. No signs of tarath, no discoloration, no hair turning white or raw flesh. After days, maybe weeks or even months, this man is finally ready to return. But not so fast. First comes the ceremony. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The purification ritual for a healed leper is one of the most detailed and symbol-laden rites in the Torah. It's recorded in Leviticus 14 and involves a multi-day process that uses living birds, cedarwood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop, each with layered meaning, each handled in precise order. The priest leads the man outside the camp, not just to keep the others safe. This location has ritual significance. The man doesn't re-enter community life until the ritual is complete. You watch as two birds are brought forward, chirping and flapping mildly. They are small, maybe doves or pigeons. One of them, brace yourself, is about to be sacrificed. A clay pot is filled with fresh spring water. The priest holds one bird over the pot, and in a swift motion, ends its life. Its blood drips into the water below. The other bird, still alive, is then dipped into this bloody water, along with the cedarwood, the hyssop branch, and the scarlet yarn. Yeah, that's not your average skincare routine. Then, the living bird is set free, flung into the air, wings glistening with a mix of blood and spring water. It flies off into the sky, carrying the impurity symbolically away from the man. You watch it disappear, and the silence that follows feels enormous. A tiny winged vessel of freedom and second chances. Quirky tidbit in later rabbinic interpretation. The cedar wood and hyssop were thought to represent extremes. Cedar being tall and proud, hyssop being low and humble. Together, they were a reminder that illness might come through arrogance, and healing only through humility. Heavy message, especially when wrapped up in bird feathers and yarn. But the ritual isn't done. Not even close. The man must now wash his clothes, shave off all his hairs, and yes, that means all of it. Eyebrows, beard, head, armpits, everything, and bathe in water. Only then is he allowed back into the camp. But even then, he can't go fully home. He must stay outside his tent for 7 more days. It's like a grace period, a spiritual re-entry phase. You follow him as he sits in a quiet spot near his family's tent. Close enough to hear them inside, too far to join them. His head is bare, and the cool air makes him shiver. He looks peaceful, though. You can tell. Just being near the people he loves is enough for now. On the 7th day, the process resumes. More shaving, more bathing, and then finally sacrifices. Historians still argue whether this elaborate ritual was designed primarily to restore social order, or if it was part of a deeper theological system about death and life. Some believe that Zareth was symbolic of death, hence the shaved head, the isolation, the blood, and that this cleansing is a form of resurrection, a rebirth into the community. And honestly, it does feel like a rebirth. The man's face glows, partly from the bath, partly from something deeper. He walks to the priest, who now oversees the offerings. 2 male lambs, 1 ewe fine flour mixed with oil. It's expensive. A real sacrifice. But remember, this isn't just about saying thanks. It's about being readmitted to life. The community. God's presence. The man places his hand on one lamb's head. It's a guilt offering, not because he sinned necessarily, but because Zareth made him unclean. His body, his skin, his very presence became incompatible with holiness. This lamb, now standing quietly near the altar, takes that burden symbolically. It's a powerful image. You feel your own skin tingle, wondering what parts of yourself you'd want to leave behind at that altar. Another lamb is offered as a burnt offering. And finally, something unique happens. The priest takes some of the blood and places it on the man's right earlobe, his right thumb, and the big toe of his right foot. Yeah, weirdly specific, but deeply meaningful. It mirrors the priestly ordination ritual. By marking these parts, ear for hearing, hand for doing, foot for walking, the man is symbolically re-consecrated. He's not just healed, he's holy again. He's tuned back into God's frequency. A final flourish, oil poured over the man's head, more than a drizzle, less than a soak. A reminder that joy follows mourning. That restoration isn't a quiet return, it's a celebration. As the man finally walks home, truly home, his family rushes out. Children throw their arms around his neck. A woman cries softly into his shoulder. He holds them all at once, barely believing he's back. He touches their faces like they're dreams made solid. You smile. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. In a world of torn garments and shouted warnings, this quiet embrace is thunderous. No more unclean, just belonging. And somewhere far in the distance, the bird that flew is still soaring. You blink, and suddenly you're indoors, or, well, as indoors as you can be in a tabernacle made of goat hair and acacia wood. The air is thick with the scent of oil and burning incense. Golden lampstands flicker in low light, and linen drapes ripple in a soft breeze. You've come to the core of priestly life now. And tonight, you're not just watching rituals. You're watching the priests themselves prepare. Because let's face it, you don't just become a divine dermatologist without first undergoing some pretty intense onboarding. The ordination of the priests, it's not your usual HR welcome package. No paperwork, no awkward icebreakers. This is serious business. Aaron, Moses' brother, and his sons are the first in line. You watch as they gather, stripped of any status they may have carried before. They're just men now, about to be remade into something more. Mainstream historical fact, the Levitical priesthood wasn't self-appointed. These roles were hereditary, passed down within the tribe of Levi, specifically through Aaron's family line. But even so, each new priest had to be ritually installed before taking on their duties. No shortcuts. Moses begins by washing Aaron and his sons with water, and not just a splash and go. We're talking a full ceremonial bathing. It's symbolic, of course, a cleansing of body and spirit. You might call it divine exfoliation. No dry patches allowed in holy service. Then comes the dressing. Layer after layer of finely woven garments. Linen tunics, sashes, embroidered robes. Aaron's outfit, in particular, is a showstopper. Blue, purple, and scarlet thread, a breastplate filled with 12 shining stones, each representing one tribe of Israel. The ephod, a kind of ornate vest, is fastened tightly. On his head, a turban with a golden plate that reads, "Holy to the Lord." You lean closer, trying not to sneeze from the mix of incense and goat hair. The oil comes next. Moses pours it over Aaron's head. It glistens down his beard, so thick you can probably hide a shekel in there. This isn't just a "congrats, you're promoted" moment. It's more like a spiritual reboot. From this point on, Aaron belongs more to the tabernacle than to himself. Quirky tidbits according to later Jewish traditions. The anointing oil used during ordination wasn't just fragrant. It was sacred. So sacred, in fact, that making a knockoff version for personal use was a capital offense. Imagine that. Sorry, ma'am. But that DIY essential oil blend you posted on TikTok is punishable by exile. Now the sacrifices begin. A bull is brought forward for a sin offering. Aaron and his sons press their hands on its head. This act, called semikar, transfers guilt symbolically from the priest to the animal. It's one of the heavier moments in the ritual. You can almost feel the weight shifting. The bull is slaughtered, and Moses applies its blood in precise locations. The altar's horns, the base, some even dashed against the sides. The animal's fat is burned, but the rest is taken outside the camp and destroyed. This is holy blood work. Spiritual detox. You sense that this isn't about perfection. It's about access. Making sure the priests are clean enough to enter God's space without combusting. And just when you think that's intense enough, another offering is prepared. A ram this time for the burnt offering. More hand pressing, more fire. The smoke rises, sharp and meaty. The scent is, oddly, both brutal and comforting. Like something ancient in your DNA recognizes it. Then a second ram. This one's different. It's called the ram of ordination. Moses takes some of its blood and dabs it. Yes, again, on the right ear, right thumb, and right big toe of each priest. Sound familiar, just like with the healed leper. Except this time, it's not about returning to the community. It's about stepping into sacred service. Historians still argue whether this triple, blood, touch gesture had direct practical origins, maybe an echo of battlefield rituals, or ancient anointing customs, or whether it was a purely symbolic device, designed to say hear rightly, act rightly, walk rightly. Then Moses mixes blood and anointing oil and sprinkles it on the garments. You flinch instinctively. These robes took forever to make. But apparently, nothing is too clean to be made holier by a little blood misting. It's messy. It's deliberate. It's a reminder holiness is not sterile. Aaron and his sons must now remain inside the tabernacle courtyard for 7 days. Not to rest, to absorb, to let the ritual soak in, like marinating in holiness. You watch them sit cross-legged as smoke rises and lamps flicker. No phones, no books, just the slow ticking of sacred time. You try to imagine sitting like that for a week. No talking to family, no wandering off. Just waiting, reflecting, existing in the charged silence between duty and destiny. You'd probably go stir crazy by day 2. But they endure it. They understand what's at stake. Another quirky note, during those 7 days, tradition says they practiced every single step of the rituals they'd soon perform. Like a dress rehearsal, only with more entrails. You can almost hear Aaron whispering, "Okay." After the blood goes on the altar horn, then we swing left, grab the basin, and recite the prayer. No pressure. Eventually the days pass, the ordination is complete, and Aaron, now fully robed and robed in authority, steps forward to offer his first official sacrifices. It's a huge moment. The people gather. The tabernacle hums with tension. Aaron lifts his hands to bless them, and something happens. Fire comes down from heaven, whoosh, and consumes the offering on the altar. Not just a flicker. A full-blown celestial barbecue. The crowd gasps. Some fall on their faces. Others shout. You might squeak a little yourself. Because this isn't metaphorical. This is divine Yelp-level approval. Aaron's expression stays calm, but you can tell. Inside, he's shaking. He's now the one who stands between the people and God. The new line of defense, the sacred skincare specialist of ancient Israel. No pressure. As the night settles in, the fire on the altar still glows. It must never go out, you remember. The priests will tend it morning and night. A living symbol of divine presence. You step back from the golden glow and think, if this is just the onboarding, imagine what the job looks like day to day. Then again, you already know, because tomorrow the sick will come, and the priests will watch, and examine, and declare. But for now, Aaron stands in stillness, robe fluttering slightly in the wind, as if heaven itself is still breathing nearby. It's early again. The camp is stretching itself awake, one yawn and fire crackle at a time. But your eyes stay fixed on the priest's tent, because now the rituals are over, the oil's dried, and the real work has begun. You follow Aaron's sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, as they prepare for the day. This isn't just about lighting lamps and roasting grain. Today, someone's coming in with a rash. Yes, a rash. Again. This time, it's a teenage boy. He walks stiffly, like his tunic is irritating his arms. You catch a glimpse as he shifts, red blotches creeping along his neck, just peeking above the collar. His face is calm, but his mother looks like she hasn't slept in a week. You already know the drill. The priest steps forward, not rushed, not nervous. He's seen this before. He examines the blotches. Are they deeper than the skin? Is the hair in the patch white? Is there swelling? It's clinical, like he's ticking boxes off an ancient checklist. You're starting to notice that this isn't just ritual. It's early medicine, and in a world without dermatologists, priests were as close as it got. Mainstream historical fact. Leviticus 13 contains some of the most medically detailed procedures in the entire Bible, especially for a book not written as a medical textbook. It describes symptoms, incubation periods, and follow-up protocols in ways that resemble early forms of diagnostic health care. The priest declares the boy quarantined. Not unclean yet, just under observation. He's told to isolate for 7 days, after which he'll be re-examined. You think of modern health guidelines. Suddenly, Leviticus feels oddly familiar. Ancient CDC anyone? Here's the quirky tidbit. The Hebrew word used for many of these skin conditions, Zarath, doesn't only apply to people. That's right. Your house could catch it too. Imagine the family meeting. Sorry kids, the walls are unclean. We're moving out. But more on that in a bit. For now, the boy's sent away, his mother trailing behind with a basket of his things. The priest remains in the tent, scribbling notes on parchment. Maybe a sketch of the rash, maybe just a log of the date. You're not sure. But it's data. The beginnings of record keeping. You realize something else, too. The priests weren't just judges of purity. They were trusted by the community. A rash wasn't a private matter. It was a public concern. People relied on these priests to distinguish between what was dangerous and what was just dry skin. And when stakes include being banished outside the camp for days, that's a lot of responsibility riding on one pair of eyeballs. Historians still argue whether these skin inspections were primarily religious, medical, or social tools for control. Were the priests acting as divine gatekeepers, health officials, or both? Maybe they didn't distinguish the categories like we do. Maybe, for them, unclean was unhealthy, and unhealthy was unholy. The week passes. The boy returns. You can tell the rash has changed, flattened in some places, scabbed in others. The priest frowns, leans in. No white hair, no spreading. This time he declares the boy clean. He can go home. His mother exhales for the first time in a week, eyes glistening with gratitude. You smile. Another mini miracle in the desert. But not every case ends so easily. Here comes another man, older, slower, with deep discoloration across both arms. When he rolls up his sleeves, even you flinch. The skin is raw, flaking, angry, looking. The priest doesn't hesitate. He declares it Zarath. The man lowers his head. He knows what this means. You watch as he tears his robe. It's part of the ritual. He covers his mouth with a cloth, like a reverse mask, and then he begins to walk, slowly, out of the camp. The words come softly at first, then louder. Unclean, unclean. You think again about the dual role the priests played, healers and exilers. They weren't there to cure. They were there to name, to declare. And sometimes naming something is the hardest part, especially when the name means isolation, exclusion, and shame. But they weren't cruel. The system wasn't designed to humiliate. It was meant to protect. These weren't doctors with prescriptions. They were protectors of a fragile camp, a fragile people, moving through a wilderness full of unknowns. Disease could decimate them. Contagion could break their covenant. So the priest stood between the outbreak and the community, doing the best he could with the tools he had. And sometimes, just sometimes, there were moments that blurred the lines. One day, you witness something strange. A woman comes in, her head covered, her posture rigid. She claims she has a spot on her scalp, but when the priest uncovers it, nothing's there. No swelling, no discoloration. Just hair, dry and matted. He frowns. Something's not adding up. Later, you overhear two priests murmuring about it. Was it a false claim? A plea for attention? Or a spiritual crisis playing out through the body? It's hard to know. And you realize, even for priests, the boundaries between physical and emotional illness could be blurry. They were trained for the skin, but the soul was messier. Still, they showed up, day after day, inspecting, instructing, comforting, sometimes isolating, sometimes restoring. Their role didn't stop with the diagnosis. They were there for the aftermath too. That evening, you find yourself watching the same priest who examined the boy. He's alone now, washing his hands with water drawn from a bronze basin. His shoulders sag. His hands tremble just a little. The weight of the day catches up with him. He's not a superhero. Just a man with oil in his beard and the lives of others in his care. The fire from the altar flickers behind him. He glances at it, eyes reflecting the flame, and you wonder if, deep down, he sees every case, every rash, every scar, not just as a threat, but as a story. A story he's been entrusted to read carefully and gently before turning the next page. The day fades, and you feel that familiar cool desert breeze sweeping through the camp, stirring the flaps of tents and making the firelight dance. It's evening, and you watch the priests gather once again. But tonight is different. There's an air of anticipation. It's time for a major rite. You can hear the murmurs among the people. An offering is about to be made. And it's not just any offering. This one's meant to purify the community, to atone for their collective sins. The ritual, as always, starts with a bull. You notice the crowd shift nervously as the sacrificial animals are led forward, bleating softly under the night sky. This isn't a moment for celebration. It's a moment of deep reckoning. The stakes feel higher tonight. The weight of the camp's sins has reached a boiling point, and now, it's time to release that tension. Mainstream historical fact. The ritual at the heart of this moment is known as the Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. It was the one day of the year when the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies, the innermost, most sacred part of the tabernacle. Here, he would make atonement for his sins and the sins of the people, sprinkling blood on the altar. It was the ultimate moment of reconciliation between the Israelites and God. You notice the high priest, now Aaron, having taken on the mantle from Moses, approaches the bull with a solemnity that seems to ripple outward through the camp. There's no rush, no drama. This is a moment to be savored, if such a thing can be said about atonement. He places both hands on the bull's head, just as his predecessors have done. His fingers press into the animal's skin, almost as if he's absorbing its strength. It's as if the bull is becoming a conduit, ready to take the sins of the community on itself. For a second, you wonder what it feels like to hold that kind of power, to be the intermediary between human frailty and divine mercy. The bull is slaughtered, and its blood is caught in a basin. From here, the priest's hands will move with practiced precision. He'll sprinkle the blood on the altar and on the veil that divides the Holy of Holies from the rest of the tabernacle. Each drop, an offering, each gesture, a prayer. But the real twist comes after the slaughter of the bull. You watch as two goats are brought forward. It's almost like a magical moment in the desert night, when the priest chooses which one will be sacrificed and which will be sent away, carrying the sins of the entire community with it. They're chosen by lot, One will die for the people's transgressions, and the other will live, taking the weight of the sins into the wilderness. The first goat is sacrificed, its blood also poured onto the altar. You can almost taste the bitterness in the air as it mingles with the smoke of the fire. But it's not the first goat that catches your attention. It's the second. The high priest, with deliberate calm, places both hands on the goat's head. He confesses the sins of the people aloud, their transgressions, their errors, their moments of selfishness, anger, and apathy. He presses the weight of it all into the creature's head, the words ringing in the still air. The goat stands still, almost resigned to its fate. The high priest's hands linger for a moment, as if he's trying to transfer all the sins of a people, of a nation, onto this single animal. Then, with a deep breath, the priest commands a scapegoat to be led out into the wilderness. This goat, known as the Azazel, will be led far from the camp. It's an ancient practice, a primal release, a dramatic act of removal, where the weight of the community's wrongs is symbolically thrown into the wilderness. You can almost hear the desert winds as the goat disappears into the night. Quirky tidbit: the term scapegoat comes directly from this ritual. In Hebrew, it's Azazel, often translated as the goat that departs. The ancient practice was so ingrained that it's still used today in many cultures to describe someone who is unfairly burdened with the blame for something they didn't do. You watch as the priest completes the ceremony. The air seems to hang heavy with release, but the people are still in the dark. They're waiting for the moment when Aaron returns from his sacred duties. He's been inside the Holy of Holies, ensuring everything is set right with God. The people are silent, holding their breath. You realize it's more than ritual for them. It's a visceral need for redemption. They've been living in the wilderness for so long, searching for hope, for cleansing, for peace. When Aaron emerges from the tent, his face is calm, almost serene. It's as though the entire weight of the camp's sins has been placed somewhere else. The scapegoat is gone. The blood has been spilled. The prayers have been offered. They can go on living. They've been cleansed, at least for now. The people erupt into quiet celebration, a mix of joy and exhaustion. They've made it through another year. The sins have been taken from them. They can breathe again. As you observe the final moments of the ceremony, a thought drifts through your mind. For all the complexity of the rituals, for all the sacrifices and laws, this moment, the moment of atonement, was about one thing: a community, all its messiness, all its failings, finding a way to be whole again. Historians still debate whether this concept of atonement was ever meant to be permanent, or whether it was always intended to be a cycle, forever repeating. Did God expect perfect lives, or was the ritual just an acknowledgement of human imperfection? A means to keep the community in relationship with Him, even in their flaws. You turn, eyes still fixed on the smoke rising from the altar. Another year will pass before this ritual is needed again. The sins will build, the burdens will weigh heavy, but the cycle will continue. The goats, the blood, the prayers. It's a constant reminder that redemption is never just a one-time event. It's a process, one that takes time, one that involves every single person in the community. And as you drift off into the night, you find yourself thinking about your own cycles, the moments of repentance, the ways you too try to balance the weight of your own imperfections with the need to move forward. And maybe that's the real lesson in all of this. No matter how ancient or foreign the rituals seem, at their core, they're about the same thing we all deal with: restarting over and over again. The morning after the Day of Atonement comes quietly, as it always does. The people are waking up, stretching from the warmth of their blankets, still feeling the weight of the night's ritual in the air. The atmosphere is thick with the lingering scent of sacrifice, the kind of smell that sticks to your skin for hours. It's a day of peace, a day to reflect. The sin offerings have been made, the scapegoat sent away, and the community is free, at least for now. But for the priests, the work continues. You watch as they prepare for another day of inspection, another day of scrutiny. It's almost like a never-ending job to keep things running smoothly in the camp. The cleanliness, the purity, those things never stop mattering. And even after the grand ceremony of atonement, The priests are still checking, inspecting, maintaining order. Today, though, there's a new challenge. A small group of people has arrived with an issue of their own. A situation that's outside the ordinary skin rashes, leprosy, or mold-infested garments. No, this time, it's about something else entirely. What appears to be a much deeper issue. You follow them into the priest's tent, watching as the concerned individuals explain the problem. It seems one of them has been struck by an ailment that can't quite be categorized. It's not just the skin, it's something beneath it. Something, in fact, that threatens not only the body but the very soul. The priests take note, listen carefully. This is not the routine examination. Mainstream historical fact. Leviticus 14 doesn't just deal with skin diseases. It also includes guidelines for the purification of houses, homes, and even garments. When something goes wrong with fabric or plaster, the priest's role shifts from personal health management to community health and preservation of the holy environment. The priest in charge turns to the group with the faintest wrinkle in his brow. He's seen a lot, but this situation feels off. There's an air of something unspoken, a heaviness in the words of the concerned parties. The disease is too severe to be just skin deep. And so, the priest goes to work, not on the body, but on the surrounding space. This isn't just a diagnosis, it's the beginning of a purification process that will need to involve everyone. Now you realize what's happening. The priests weren't simply caretakers of the people's bodies, but guardians of the physical space too. This wasn't just a matter of a healthy person coming in with a rash. It was about the health of the camp as a whole. Leviticus 14, after all, addresses more than just people. It tackles homes, garments, and the very environment the Israelites inhabit. If something in the camp was wrong, it had to be dealt with. No stone or wall left unturned. And so, the priest begins to give instructions for cleaning the affected area. A thorough cleansing ritual that will involve scraping the walls, using a concoction of water and other materials to purify the environment. This wasn't just about keeping people safe. It was about ensuring that nothing unclean, nothing that could potentially harm the community, could remain. Quirky tidbit. The concept of cleanliness in Leviticus goes so far that it wasn't just a matter of washing bodies. Even your house had to undergo cleansing procedures. Imagine calling in a priest to come clean your bathroom. Oh, no worries. I'll just grab my ritual knife and some hyssop. As the priests perform these acts, you can't help but think about the broader implications of what they're doing. It's not just about cleanliness for cleanliness's sake. This ritual has deeper layers. It's about separation. It's about the sanctity of the camp. And most importantly, it's about making sure that the holiness of God doesn't get tainted by the imperfections of human life. Historians still debate whether these purification rituals were purely spiritual, purely medical, or a blending of both. It's clear that these rituals were meant to preserve the holiness of the community. But how much of it was about divine protection, and how much was about ensuring the health of the people, remains an open question. In the meantime, the priests continue their work. The purification rituals go on, with no one spared from the process. The people understand the necessity of the work, but there's also an underlying sense of unease. Purification isn't easy. It isn't a quick fix. It's a drawn-out process, one that requires both physical and emotional work. As the day stretches on, the priest moves from one area to the next. The people look on, their faces filled with a mixture of anxiety and trust. They trust the priests because they've been trained to keep their community pure. But they also know that purification isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about accepting that everything, including themselves, has to be put through a long, sometimes painful, process to ensure it's clean enough to approach God. And so, you sit quietly for a while, watching the people, watching the priests. You think about the way the world was, how holiness and cleanliness were intertwined, how something as mundane as a wall or a garment could be the bearer of spiritual weight. And how at the heart of all of this, the people, be they rich or poor, healthy or sick, were simply seeking connection. A chance to be holy, a chance to start again. You realize with a bit of a smile that the ancient Israelites might have been the first to really understand how much we need to make peace with our surroundings. Not just our bodies, but the space we inhabit. We still do it today, in some ways, cleansing ourselves, our spaces, our environments, hoping to feel pure again, hoping for some kind of new beginning. The sun is beginning to set again, casting long shadows over the camp. The soft glow of the evening light stretches across the tents, and there's a sense of calm in the air. The rituals of the day are winding down, but the sense of order and cleanliness continues to resonate through the people. The Israelites are getting used to these routines, these rhythms, the purifications, the sacrifices. Each of them a step towards ensuring that the camp remains holy, that the community remains whole. Tonight, though, something is different. A group of priests has gathered around a fire, and they're talking in low tones. You can hear the quiet murmurs of their conversation, the kind that suggests something important is being decided. These are men who have spent their lives steeped in the rituals of Leviticus. But tonight, it seems they're debating something deeper, something more personal. As you draw closer, you catch a few words: holiness, sacrifice, unclean, and then one of them speaks with a quiet certainty. What happens when someone fails? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Mainstream historical fact. In Leviticus, the concept of purity is closely tied to the idea of holiness. The Hebrew word kadosh, meaning holy, implies separation, being set apart from the rest of the world. The Israelites, in their wandering, were called to be a holy people, a people set apart by God. This was not just a spiritual or emotional separation, but a physical one as well. Their bodies, their homes, their very clothes. Everything had to be pure to maintain this holiness. The priest who posed the question isn't asking about an individual failure, but about something much larger. The ritual sacrifices are supposed to absolve the people of their sins. But what if they fail again? What if the cycle of sin and purification is endless, with no true resolution? He's worried about the long-term implications of living in this constant state of purification. What happens when the ritual starts to feel like a burden? When it feels like no one is ever truly clean enough? Quirky tidbit. The ancient Israelites believed that being ritually unclean wasn't just a personal matter. It affected the entire community. For example, a person who touched a dead body was considered unclean, but so was anyone who touched that person. It's like a contagious purity. One bad apple could spoil the whole bunch, except, in this case, it was about keeping everyone clean. As the conversation goes on, the priest's tone grows heavier. What happens to the sinner who is always found unclean? He asks. It's clear that the rituals can't solve everything. There are limits to purification. There's no magic cure for the human condition. The people can offer sacrifices, pray, confess their sins, but what happens if they keep stumbling? What if they keep repeating the same mistakes? The other priests are silent for a while, thinking. Finally, one of them speaks up. We are all unclean in some way. It's a cycle, yes, but it's not a punishment. It's the way we approach God. We keep coming back to Him. We keep seeking Him. Purification is the journey, not the destination. Historians still debate whether this was meant to be a permanent solution, or whether the continual sacrifice was intended to remind the people of their inherent need for God. Was this constant need for atonement a burden or a gift, an opportunity to come closer to the divine every time they stumbled? The answer, it seems, isn't clear-cut. But the conversation shifts. One of the younger priests suggests that perhaps the key isn't in trying to be perfect. After all, the rituals never promise perfection, but in maintaining the relationship with God. It's not about being sinless. It's about being faithful. It's about recognizing that you will never be perfect, but you will always be welcomed back into God's presence. The rituals, the sacrifices, they are a means to that end, but not the end itself. And so, as you listen to the conversation unfold, you begin to understand that the priesthood was about much more than just ritual. It was about holding the community together, about creating a space for the people to approach God, even in their imperfection. The purification wasn't the goal. It was the way to keep coming back, to try again, to renew the connection between human and divine. You notice, as the priests begin to settle into a more peaceful silence, that their task is not an easy one. It's not just about performing rituals. It's about guiding the people through their own struggles. It's about reminding them that they can always come back to God, no matter how many times they fall short. The conversation around the fire continues late into the night. The priests are debating, questioning, and reflecting. You realize, as you sit there listening, that these men are not immune to the struggles of the people they serve. They too are trying to navigate the delicate balance between holiness and imperfection. They too must come to terms with the never-ending need for purification, for atonement, for grace. As the night draws to a close, the priests finally disperse, their faces thoughtful. You too are left with the feeling that the journey of purification is far from simple. But maybe that's the point. It's a journey that never truly ends, just as the community's relationship with God never truly ends. It's a constant process of coming back, of seeking reconciliation, of trying again. In the days that follow, the camp seems quieter. The people go about their daily tasks with a new sense of purpose, perhaps recognizing that the rituals of purification are more than just obligations. They're reminders that we are all in need of something greater than ourselves. That we all need to keep coming back. That holiness is not a state you achieve once and for all. It's a path you walk, over and over again. And as you settle into the warmth of your own bedroll under the stars, you can't help but think of your own cycles, your own need for purification. The ways you strive, and sometimes stumble, but always find your way back to the path. The journey, it seems, never really ends. And maybe that's the most comforting thought of all. The fire burns low in the distance now, just a flicker of orange light that gradually fades into the soft quiet of the desert night. The stars above stretch endlessly, as if inviting you into their vastness, a reminder of the unfathomable distance between the divine and the human. You can hear the gentle rustling of the wind through the tents, the soft sounds of the camp winding down after another day of rituals, prayers, and sacrifices. It feels almost peaceful, doesn't it? After all, the rituals may be demanding, but they bring order, peace, a rhythm that makes life in the wilderness bearable. It's a reassurance that things are taken care of, even if only for today. But you can't help but wonder how much of this daily cycle really sinks in. How many of the people understand why they perform these acts of atonement? How many realize the incredible weight behind the priest's role? After all, these rituals aren't just about cleanliness or even physical health. They're about life and death. The purity of the camp isn't just about looking good on the outside, but about creating a space where God can dwell among his people. Without it, the community would be spiritually vulnerable, exposed. And so, the work continues. The next morning, there's a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. The camp is buzzing with activity, with people preparing for another round of offerings and inspections. The priests are moving with purpose, their robes flowing behind them as they hurry from one place to the next. You watch as they begin to set up the sacred space, readying the altars, preparing the incense. It's an art form as much as it is a sacred duty, a balancing act between ritual and reality. Mainstream historical fact. One of the most sacred duties of the priest was to ensure the continuity of the rituals that allowed the Israelites to remain pure before God. This wasn't just ceremonial, it was a lifeline to their identity as God's chosen people. The sacrifices, the offerings, the purifications, all of these were necessary for the community to survive in the eyes of God. Without the priests, there could be no way to maintain this delicate equilibrium. As the day unfolds, something changes in the way the people move through the camp. There's a shift in the air, a collective understanding that the purity of their community depends on the success of these rituals. The priests work tirelessly, but they are not the only ones involved. Everyone in the camp plays a part. The community's purification is an all-hands, on-deck effort, a reminder that holiness is not just the priest's responsibility, it's the responsibility of every person in the camp. After all, what good is a clean house if the people within it are unclean? Quirky tidbit. There was a time when a person who was declared unclean had to live outside the camp for a period of time until they were deemed clean again. They didn't get to join in community activities, weddings, or celebrations. Imagine being told you couldn't attend a party because you'd accidentally stepped on the wrong kind of insect. Kind of harsh, but that's how seriously the community took purity. The priests continue their rounds, inspecting and making sure everyone is clean, everyone is pure. There are no shortcuts in their work. They perform their duties with precision, unwavering in their commitment to the rituals. But as you watch them, you can't help but wonder, do they ever grow tired of it all? The endless cycles of purification, the repeated sacrifices. The weight of responsibility must be heavy on their shoulders, especially since their own sins are never far from their minds. Historians still argue whether the priesthood was meant to be a calling for a select few or a burden that was ultimately shared by all. Was it a privilege to serve in the tabernacle, or was it an endless cycle of self-purification, a duty that never quite allowed you to feel whole? For the priests, it seems the answer isn't so simple. Their lives are dedicated to serving God, but in doing so, they are constantly reminded of their own humanity. They are not perfect. They are not beyond reproach. And yet, they must stand in the gap, serving as intermediaries between God and the people, offering sacrifices on behalf of those who cannot offer them for themselves. The sun sets on another day, and you can't help but reflect on what you've witnessed. The priests, the people, the rituals, they all work in tandem, each part contributing to the delicate balance that allows the community to thrive. The sacrifices, the offerings, the purifications, they may seem endless, but they are also part of something greater. They are part of a story that stretches beyond the camp, beyond the rituals, and into the very heart of what it means to be human. As the camp quiets down for the night, you think about the constant search for purity, the constant longing to be whole. It's a cycle that never ends, just like the work of the priests. There's always something more to cleanse, always something more to offer. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The endless striving for purity is itself a testament to the desire for closeness with the divine. And as you settle in for the night, the flickering light of the campfire growing dimmer in the distance, you feel a sense of peace wash over you. This cycle of purification, of seeking holiness, might never be fully completed, but that's okay, because the journey itself is where the grace is found. In the striving, in the seeking, in the constant return. So as you close your eyes and drift off into the quiet of the desert night, you know that tomorrow will bring another chance to strive, another chance to begin again. And perhaps that's all that's truly needed.